In a world of 350 billion movie podcasts, two chumps have decided that now is the time for cult movies to engage in combat. Disagreements will be had, blood may be spilled, and voiceover artists most definitely will not be paid. This is Cult Film Face-Off.
Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Cult Film Face-Off. With me, as ever, is Chet Roivas.
Hi.
And I am Nick Leonard. In this week's episode, we dive into the Troma canon and pick out two of their most revered films. First up, we have The Toxic Avenger. Melvin, a horrifically bullied, hapless mop boy, falls into a vat of toxic waste and a hero is born in Tromaville. The Toxic Avenger.
Meet little Melvin. He's a 90-pound weakling. Everyone hated Melvin.
I'm gonna take this mop and shove it down your throat.
They teased him.
I wanna do it with you. Okay.
They taunted him. They tormented him until he had a horrifying accident and fell into a vat of nuclear waste. Transforming little Melvin into a hideously deformed creature of superhuman size and strength. Melvin became the Toxic Avenger. The Toxic Avenger is coming to your town. Look out.
First of all, I'd like to say thanks to Andy Hamilton, who got in touch and recommended that we dig into the Troma canon and pit two of their films against one another. So, Toxic Avenger, had you seen it before?
Toxic Avenger, I have never seen a Troma film before. I've read many articles about Troma. They were endlessly featured in magazines. Hot Dog, Neon, all those old magazines we used to read, Empire, etc., etc. I've read so many things about them and I've seen so many clips that I've just kind of thought, I know what they do, not really interested.
Right.
So I hadn't seen... I think I saw like a little bit of Terra Firma many years ago and I just thought, you're watching one of these, I'm not interested. Yeah. These two are the first two Troma films I've seen from start to finish.
Okay, what do you think of Toxic Avenger?
I really liked it. It's a very, very enjoyable film. It's extraordinarily camp, extraordinarily retro. I mean, the humour is fat people are funny, nerds are fucking nerds and they're funny, gays are prissy, idiots, blind people are as thick as pig shit. I mean, it's just there's no targets. It just goes for everybody. It's completely relentlessly offensive and it's engaging. It's funny. I don't know. I thought I was really surprised by how much I liked it. Was this your first Troma film?
I'd caught a documentary about 10 years ago. I caught like 20 minutes at the end of a documentary which was talking about Troma Film as an independent
I've seen it.
production company. I saw a little bit of it, saw Lloyd Kaufman, saw lots of very attractive, well-endowed ladies. Toxic Avenger. Okay. I didn't enjoy Toxic Avenger.
What?
No, I didn't enjoy it. I found it a slot. Basically, I struggled to find it very funny. There was literally probably two scenes that I found really funny. There's a scene where he goes, "I'm not just a pretty face," and makes this really odd noise and gurns at camera, and I absolutely fell off the couch. It's probably not even going to be that funny, but that really cracked me up. What I found funny as well was Toxic Avenger's MO of sticking mops in mouths and them saying this must be some kind of political statement.
I picked up
that really cracked me up. What I found a bit grating is that there's better acting in porn movies, and it's kind of like I can sit down for half an hour and watch something that's like that, but for an hour and a half I was just like, I wasn't finding it funny enough to sit through an hour and a half of it. I know what it's, what they're setting out to do is to break every social taboo, and they do that with an unrelenting energy and pace, and it revels in its awfulness. But it's not something that I'm enjoying. It's not something that I'm enjoying for an hour and a half.
I'm so surprised you don't like it. I really, really liked it quite a bit, and I felt weirdly enlightened after watching it. Because it seemed to me that there's something so sensible about doing things this way, about hiring actors who can't act because bad acting is funny. And this is supposed to be a comedy, so I just thought, why not? Like, why not? I mean, I got a lot of laughs out of the fact that the people in this film cannot act to save their lives. And it made me think of stuff like Police Academy. Imagine if Police Academy, rather than have performers who are just sort of okay, why not just have them be really, like, genuinely quite shit? I think it would have made the film better because there's more laughs in it. I thought this is a really bountiful... There was so much to laugh at, you didn't think?
I really wasn't laughing. What I laughed at more, actually, than the main performances that were just very hokey and shit, was that I really laughed at the background performances. That the extras were the funniest thing in it. And when I'm looking at the extras giving me more laughs than the guys that have actually got lines of dialogue, then I'm thinking, there's something not quite right.
We need to definitely come back to that when we're talking about the chickening or whatever. What's it called? Poultrygeist.
I will say straight from the off that I enjoyed Toxic Avenger more than Poultrygeist. When you're critiquing or you're talking about a Troma film, you can't talk about a Troma film when you compare it to other kinds of film. I think you have to compare Troma film for Troma film.
Yeah.
And there were endearing. I don't sit down here and I didn't hate Toxic Avenger. I just didn't really get on with Toxic Avenger as much as I thought. I was actually really looking forward to Toxic Avenger because it's got a great title. It's got great artwork. I've always loved the artwork in the Toxic Avenger film. I love the fact that he's kind of like, it's a cross between The Thing and a Garbage Pail Kid.
Yeah.
And I was really looking forward to it. I'd expected that this is one of the most revered Troma films, that I was really going to be caught up in it and really enjoy it. But there's kind of like a self-knowingness to it that makes me not enjoy it as much.
It seemed to me that they just thought, this is a shit film. It's cheap. It's very, very trashy. So there's things that there's things that the films do, and the fact that they hire bad actors, it just seemed like a way to mine the situation for more laughs than they'd get otherwise. Just the way that everything is ramped up to such an absurd degree. I mean, the villains. the lead villain. That is a 5-year-old interpretation of what a villain.
Cigar face.
No, not cigar face. No, the main. The jocks that are terrorising the. Toxic Avenger in the beginning, wide eyes, burst. It's not that's an insane person from the perspective of a 5-year-old child. It's so.
But that's probably great if you're a 5-year-old child.
No, but I had to appreciate. But I'm talking about that. Those are decisions made by a quote unquote actor. Those enhanced. I really love the fact that they weren't actors. First of all, we should probably. When it was suggested that we do this, the problem with picking 2 films to look at from Troma is, where do you go? Do you pick the best Troma films, quote unquote, with critics? Do you pick the worst? Because considering it's a studio that's renowned for making terrible films, do you pick the ones that are supposed to be the worst? So Toxic Avenger is sort of an iconic character, but Poultrygeist, did you pick that just because you liked the title?
I went through online of what are the most revered and the most popular films with the fan base of Troma, and Poultrygeist is holding really high esteem.
Okay, that sort of makes sense.
So that's why that's why I went for those 2 films. Is that I went for an old school Troma film that is that is like a tentpole release. It's Toxic Avenger. It spawned 3 sequels.
Yeah, of course.
Poultrygeist is a fairly current Troma film that the fans absolutely loved. It's got a huge amount of love, that film.
Okay, that's
online.
Interesting. Okay, so let's stick with Toxic Avenger.
My thing is I wasn't laughing at all the gags that they were really pushing.
Didn't you just find it funny how the villains weren't just villains? They were people who beat up elderly people in the street and who tried to run over children.
Yeah,
did you not? It was amped to such a way.
But it tries so hard at amping everything up so much. It kind of, I found, to be honest, I found myself desensitised by trying to be so funny and so outrageous. That makes me kind of just back away from it a bit. And I'm sure people get a huge amount of enjoyment out of this film, but I am not getting a huge amount of enjoyment out of the Toxic Avenger. I didn't find it that funny.
That's one of those situations where all I can say is that I did find it funny.
Every shot of it is so self-aware. That's what kind of pushed me away from it is that it was just trying so much. I mean, you know, hats off the fact that it revels in its awful, and there's such an amazing energy in what it's trying to do on the screen, but it's not something that I'm connecting with at all, because I don't think there's anything particularly clever, even a little bit of black humour, a little bit of, do you know what I mean, a little bit, you know, body humour, or kind of like Monty Python-esque, or something, you know, something that's a little bit subversive. There's nothing subversive because it's just so over the top.
Every time I saw a joke, I thought, I know that's happened somewhere else. There's a scene where they're doing aerobics and someone puts a snake down the aerobic teacher's back, and then he starts going, and they think it's part of the aerobics. That joke will never.
But it's like literally, it's like you said, they'd be casted by 6-year-olds. It's so infantile, the humour.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just like trying so hard that it just fails.
I think that there is effort to a degree, but I just think I don't know. I enjoyed it from start to finish, and I was as sceptical as anybody going to this. I've seen so many clips of Troma films. I was like, I like people who ironically like shit films too. But
I didn't go in sceptical. I went in really excited and wanting to like it, and I left it I left it feeling a bit like disappointed. What I did like when Melvin goes into the toxic waste and his body is savage. It's created lesions, boils, stripped of his hair. The odd side effect was that when he speaks, he sounds like he's had elocution lessons and he comes straight out of a Swiss finishing school. That made me laugh. His voice changes like toast of London. That made me laugh. That was a running gag that was really funny. I wish there were more funny running gags. I just wish there were more bona fide gags rather than gags that were so inane that a 6 or 7-year-old would puke. Shit, I mean, we could talk about it for ages, but I just didn't find it that funny.
Yeah. I mean, I really, really did, and I liked it. And like I said, I did feel oddly enlightened. I just thought, I'm not entirely sure why, if you're making a comedy, there's built-in laughs. So many. I laughed so much at how extraordinarily strangely some of those people decided to interpret the lines that they had to give. I mean, I just thought it was fun. I mean, I know it to a degree it is calculated, obviously, but I did enjoy it as a narrative, as a fucking completely and utterly derivative and stupid narrative. And I love the fact that it could have probably been shorter, but it was like 80-something minutes.
Yeah,
it could have been shorter. It was quite cute when there was that the guys who were holding up the fast food joint, and they introduced themselves as they were a band. And on Shotgun we've got Dave, and on Cash Register.
It was slightly funny when the dog stood across the floor.
Yeah, I thought that was funny as well.
That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? It made me laugh, and I was tuned into it. I liked it. So yeah, let's move on
swiftly.
Yeah.
To Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead.
Oh.
Mutated toxic spirits exact revenge on a community for building an American chicken bunker restaurant on an ancient Indian burial ground.
But I love the skin.
So, I didn't think I would ever say, when surmising a film, that the highlight of a film would be a cameo by Ron Jeremy. But this is it. I mean, on paper, this could seem like a really interesting film. A guy falls into a meat grinder, chicken-human transformations, upturned fingernails, bodies exploding, disembowelments, heads being ripped off, limbs being chopped off, eyes popping out their socket, giant penises, suicide bombers. But it was dull. Really dull. Loads of musical numbers that plump depths of shit that I didn't think were possible. Stephen King quotes There's a quote of Stephen King of how he feels about this film.
Go on.
In quotes, "This is hilarious."
Okay.
I've not got a lot of positives to glean from this. What did you think of Poultrygeist?
Okay, well, Toxic Avenger was a film that I liked fairly consistently throughout, and this was a film that I liked for about 20-25 minutes. I mean, it opens with a very, very, very solid sight gag, and it doesn't really let up for about like 20-25 minutes, and then it kind of falls down and it just becomes repetitive. The weird thing, I mean, this is so much more brazenly a cheap film than Toxic Avenger, because that had numerous locations. This entire film, aside from the prologue and the finale, takes place in one location, outside the restaurant and inside the restaurant.
He likes filming. I just say, Kaufman in these two films, he does focus on restaurants and fast food.
Poultrygeist is way, way more brazenly offensive than Toxic Avenger, and it's also just, it's way more gross. I mean, I turned away like 2 times in the first 20 minutes just because I thought it was just this is more of a step up in that there's more gore, there's more gross out moments, there's more sexist jokes, there's more misogynist jokes, there's more fucking xenophobic jokes. It's just more Troma. But after that initial sort of slightly bewitching 20-25 minutes, it completely lost me. And there were some highlights. I think the final sort of bloodbath is reminiscent of Brain Dead, which we spoke of recently, but not you know, it doesn't hold the candle to that film.
No.
But there was some. I mean, I didn't hate it, but I wasn't as happy with it as I was with the Toxic Avenger.
Yeah, I mean, when I compare this to Toxic Avenger, it's almost like it makes Toxic Avenger seem that there's a bit of charm to it when there is no charm to Poultrygeist at all. The thing that I did like about this is that there's a couple of quite inventive methods of people being dispatched. There's quite a nice arm through the ass, out the mouth kill.
Oh, yeah.
There's quite a nice guy falls into a meat grinder. I also learned that projectile diarrhea is just another way the establishment tries to keep down the black man. There's a scene in this film with the black character who's running the restaurant, where they do like an ode to Jaws. That made me crack the slightest of smiles, where he goes into the quint monologue talking about the chickens.
Yeah, right.
I raised a slight smile to that segment. I didn't enjoy Poultrygeist. It's one of these things that I think it could have been a really good 20 minutes of insanity, but yeah, sitting through 3 or 4 musical numbers was kind of teeth grinding.
I thought that the musical numbers were fairly frequently amusing, but they were way too long. Like, I think one of them was bordering on 6 minutes, maybe even 8 minutes. It went on for way too long, and a couple of them were just like blatantly disposable. There was one they do one of the songs they do in the stock cupboard with Lloyd Kaufman and the kid, and it's just like, this doesn't need to be in the film completely. It's the weakest song, and because for a Troma film, it's actually quite long. It's like bordering on 100 minutes, I think. This is, I think, almost certainly the most anally fixated film I've ever seen. There are so many shots of backsides and things going into backsides, and I don't know if anyone has ever wanted what's the opposite of bird's eye view? Like a POV shot in a toilet of a morbidly obese man violently shitting. I mean, like, there can't be many people that wanted to see that, but this is another one of the buttons that they're pressing. After a while, I think, unlike Toxic Avenger, it just becomes, I just thought it's too much of this, too little of a plot, and the fact that it is set in one location it becomes too knackering. It completely knocked the wind out of my sails. I liked it for the first 20 minutes, and there are some really interesting bits in the end when it is a bloodbath, and they do some amusing jokes where, you know, they pull some guy's legs apart as if it was a chicken. There were some amusing jokes, but nowhere on the scale of something like Brain Dead, which obviously we spoke about. But I just thought you have to admire their adherence to a vision, because these films,
they've got an MO. Which they stick to.
Yeah, but this film was shot more than 20 years after Toxic Avenger, and you can barely tell, aside from the fact that they're set in different periods and there's things in the film that couldn't exist in another period. But it's like it's the same grimy, shitty film. I'm sure he must still be shooting on celluloid because it looks like the same. He's probably using the same dirty old battered camera that he was when he made fucking Toxic Avenger. So yeah, it was cheap, it was nasty. But I thought, I mean, again, I did think some bits of it were quite funny. I thought some of the lyrics to some of the music was quite amusing. Yeah.
I kind of hate musicals in films per se. They're not, and there's nothing. It wasn't just cleverly written. It wasn't cleverly harmonised. It wasn't. None of those music numbers were. It's like music numbers work. They very rarely work. An example of music numbers work. Trey Parker and Matt Stone.
Did
South
Park.
No, South Park works amazing.
Book of Mormon.
No, but they did a kind of a zombie. What was it called? Cannibalism, a musical.
Yeah, right.
They made that work. The musical numbers didn't work on here. They weren't particularly written cleverly. The harmonised was a bit.
No, it's crass as fuck. Like there's just a couple of lines in each song that's like, that's pretty funny. I don't think nobody. Not even Lloyd Kaufman's family wanted the soundtrack to this film. I mean, it's not great music. It's just a delivery system for more shit jokes.
No, I mean, it's just more tuning out. I mean, when it worked is, the final sequence when everything ramps up and it goes insane. That energy is really inviting, and that worked. But the music numbers I really tuned out on them.
It's probably a good thing that there wasn't that many songs in it. But I thought the script was actually.
They were long. It's only
some of them were way too long.
It's only a barely a 90-minute film, and there's 3 or 4 musical numbers in there.
No, this is what it's like. That's the problem with it. It's like 100 and something minutes. I think it was over an hour and a half. I think considerably, which makes it kind of more annoying because some of those songs you add
up all those musical numbers. You've got at least you've got at least 15 solid minutes of musical numbers.
You probably have. Yeah, I mean, I thought the script was better than the Toxic Avenger. So I thought that it fit that the actors in this were blatantly better than the actors in Toxic Avenger. The actors in this have actually gone on to have careers and they are actors by trade, whereas the people in Toxic Avenger, I don't even know what they were doing then and are doing now. So, I mean, the finale is good. It's a splatter fest like the end of Braindead, for example, and it is just an orgy of jokes and decapitation. Some of those jokes are terrible. And it's not, I mean, the thing is about Braindead is that it is overpoweringly funny, and this is just not. There's a couple of that's nice. Well,
this is it. There's a couple of cracked smiles, but there's nothing that made me laugh out loud in this film.
Nothing at all.
No. Apart from the finger. The first sequence worked quite well. When the guys they're getting it on in the graveyard, and that guy is looking at them getting it on. That made me chuckle.
Yeah, I thought that first scene was really good.
And he pulls the finger goes up his ass, and then the guy gets taken out by the fist going up his ass. For me, once that segment was done, everything went downhill and went way too over the top. There was nothing clever or subversive, or they don't go for subversive or clever at all. But even just like a little touch of, you could even do something like basic Lauren Hardy kind of slapstick with that kind of setup, and it could have worked. But rather than that, they just have a really, really fat guy shitting on a toilet for 5 minutes.
That says it all. You're just treated to a fat man shitting on a toilet. This is not the kind of film that I thought I'd ever really enjoy. I mean, Poultrygeist is not a good film. It's a 20-minute sort of series of scenes that work, and then I just think it just keeps repeating itself, and it's you can feel the momentum. It's like the air going out of a balloon. The songs get less funny, the jokes get less funny. Everything
it loses energy from the first 15 minutes. When you're first introduced to it, you've got all those characters outside. You have got some quite funny background actors.
That's again. I was going to say, like you said about
when he finds out she's a lesbian, you got some quite funny stuff going on in the background.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But when it labours into the Colonel Sanders guy turning up and the black guy running the branch, it's just kind of like it's a vapidness of gags.
Having never been exposed to Troma properly, I kind of just like. I don't care. I'm just going to.
So it sounds like maybe you want to search out some more Troma stuff. Would you do that?
I could definitely watch it. I mean, yeah, I could. Yeah. But again, it's that weird thing. Do you go and look for ones that are supposed to be quote unquote good, or do you seek out the ones that are supposed to be genuinely bad? It's like Surf Nazis Must Die, I think, is the most reviled Troma film. That's meant to be just completely without merit, and it doesn't make any sense, and it's shit, and people don't like it. But
that's probably worth.
Is it? It's
Romeo and Juliet.
People like that. Again,
well, but the thing is that I will take my health. Me not getting enjoyment out of of these films or getting much laugh out is one thing. But the thing is that these films have got a very, very loyal fan base. The fact is, Kaufman is out there doing his thing, uncompromised. He has a vision. Fuck everybody else. Yeah. I think that's commendable. It's just not something that I'm going to sit down and watch any more of.
That's fair enough. I mean, to be honest, I don't know if I will, but I won't be as unopen to, whenever anyone would say anything about a Troma film, I'd be like, knock yourself out. That's for people who just want to ironically enjoy films that are deliberately shit. But
I mean, there's an interesting quote from Lloyd Kaufman, and he says, "I don't make crappy movies. I spend 2 or 3 years making a film. I don't take myself seriously, but I take my movies very seriously."
People who make films deliberately to be shit are not in any way enjoyable from my experience. I enjoyed both of these films, less so Poultrygeist.
Did he do porno films before he did Troma? He must have, right?
Lloyd Kaufman?
Yeah. Did anything to do with porn actresses or anything like that?
Not that I know of, no. I don't.
I thought I remember reading somewhere.
You were thinking of Abel Ferrara?
No, I don't think I was. I know there was something to do with, there was actors in Troma films, actresses that have been in.
Oh, I'm sure. Of course, I don't doubt that for 1 second.
Yeah, if I just skip. I mean, these films are meant to be watched with a group of friends when you're high as a kite or you're properly boozed up. But I just. Yeah, I didn't laugh, and the whole thing is that these films are there to kind of.
If you're
not laughing at them, where do you go? Yeah, where do you go with them? I didn't get the laughs that I thought I was going to get out of them.
That's when, like, speaking about anything, if you didn't find it funny, there's no point in even going into it. Toxic Avenger was a better film. What did you think was better?
Toxic Avenger is better than Poultrygeist. Yeah, I mean, that's hands down. There's no, there was more charm to Toxic Avenger than Poultrygeist. More was going on. It was very claustrophobic. Poultrygeist. It doesn't move out of that.
It doesn't end either. There's even one bit where the main character goes, well, maybe for another 15 minutes.
It felt really long. I know with Toxic Avenger, the pacing is fine. It rattles along. Whereas Poultrygeist, I felt like I was going through treacle to get to the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was overlong. I did kind of like Poultrygeist, but Toxic Avenger's the winner, I think. So yeah.
Safety. Thank you very much for listening. That wraps up another episode. You can get us on Twitter, CFFO, Facebook, iTunes. Please subscribe. Any suggestions of films, we'd really like to hear them. So please do message us.
See you next time. Take it easy.
Laters.
Cult film face-off.
Melvin, a horrifically bullied, hapless mop boy, falls into a...
There's no way that can't be funny. You have to reword that.
I laughed when I wrote it. Okay. Melvin, a horrifically bullied, hapless mop boy. Melvin, a horrifically bullied, hapless mop boy.